So let's talk about three decisions that I say are a mistake to make. Now, these decisions often, when people make them, they're coming from a good place. They want to protect the interests of their loved ones, or they want to protect the interests of their whole family, but then they never envision the consequences of this decision, or rather, these decisions. So what are these decisions that I'm talking about? Hold on a second. Before we do so, let me introduce myself. In case you're here for the very first time, my name is Yolanda Mnyengeza. I'm an attorney by profession, and I work here in Johannesburg, South Africa for a law firm called Mnyengeza Attorneys. So let's get to the discussion. So let's talk about the first decision that parents love to make. In fact, this one is a favorite, and I often say to my clients, hold on a bit before you make this decision. Think about it clearly, understand the consequences, right? And thereafter, if you are pleased with the understanding, then you can make this decision. What decision am I talking about? That is parents moving their immovable property, their home, to the children to try and protect the interests of that child or their own children. What interests are we talking about here? Remember, when somebody passes away and leaves behind a property, ideally what is expected is that the property must be transferred from the person when they pass away to the people who are inheriting it. Now, obviously, this requires money. Also, when a parent has an asset that is an immovable property, could be a bit expensive, which means that if it stays on their name, when they pass away, the administration cost may be just a bit expensive. And parents often are concerned about whether or not kids are going to be able to afford all of these costs. And they often say, you know what, to beat all of this, let's just transfer this house to the kids right now when we're still alive, so that when something happens to us, literally there's minimal in our names and they don't have the burden of having to transfer the properties to themselves. Is this a good idea? Let's talk about what happens when you make this decision. What does it mean? See, when you transfer a property to another person, what normally happens? Think about it from a sales perspective. Once a person gives you the money and you get the house in their name, what happens? You cut ties, right? You can no longer control that property. You don't have a say when it comes to that property. In fact, the person can even, who has bought that property from you, can chuck you out of that property if you decide to visit because it's their own. So it is the same when you also move this property to the children. It becomes theirs. They have full control over that property and they can do as they please with that property. And the unfortunate part is that they can decide also that you are a nuisance in their property and they can kick you out. Now, obviously, no parent wants to imagine that a child can do this to them. But then again, we have seen it happen. And it hasn't happened once, not twice. It has happened so many times. And often when the parents try to get this matter resolved, after all of this has happened, they find out that unfortunately this is a decision that is permanent and cannot be reversed because they were well aware of their decisions when they made that decision. So is it a good idea from your perspective? From mine, not necessarily. Are you telling me there's no other option that you can look into to try and make sure that you curb all of these concerns that you have? Consider sitting down with someone. There's a lot of things that you can explore, but this one, I don't know. But for me, not a really great one. Let's go to the second decision. So let's talk about the second decision that also I say is not really advisable. Not the best decision that you can make, eh? But also, this decision comes from a very good place, from the perspective of the parents, because they're trying to protect the interests of their family. What decision am I talking about here? I'm talking about parents moving their business to their children or to a certain child in the family with the hope that this child can continue the business. A lot of the times when parents leave businesses behind and they pass away, they know, right, that it's very rare that the children can be able to take the businesses forward or that business forward because they were the pillars of that business. But then again, the biggest concern is that this business was bringing in income and was giving this family comfortability. And so they want to make sure by all means possible that it continues to survive. So instead of them allowing for this business to be inherited after their death, they would rather opt to move the business, give it to one child or the children of this family, and then say, it's your business, continue with it. But then again, the mistake here is that in most instances, you'd find that the parents still have an interest in the business. For example, in the form of the income, they still want to sometimes participate in the business, right? And unfortunately, they are not always clued up about what the other person who they've transferred this business to could actually end up doing. For example, there are instances where children who have been given such businesses will sell them as soon as they get them. They just don't have an interest in the business, and they never voiced it out. Or maybe they did voice it out, but parents sometimes know what is good for their kids. But then again, the kids will sell it. And when I say kids, I don't mean children, hey? I just mean, adult children. But you get what I'm saying. So they often will sell those properties, and the parents will be so disgruntled. In fact, the parents would try to stop such transactions, but that cannot happen because you've given away all the rights pertaining to that business. As with the first example, when you sell something to a third party or you give it away to a third party, what do? You give away full rights to that thing in entirety. So you cannot now come back to say, I still want to have control. I still have an interest in it, right? And the other thing that also can happen, sometimes, you'd find that the child actually does, pave way and works on this business and it continues to support the family. But then again, they also do get married, right? Next thing, they are being taken to divorce. The wife also wants part of that business. Alternatively, sometimes, let's not even say a wife, let's say a spouse, right? Sometimes this person who has taken forward this business happens to abruptly pass away, even before the parents. The next thing, their surviving spouse takes everything. The families often in this regard are disgruntled, right, when this happens. And they think they have power because they were the ones who started that business. They were the ones, who moved that business and to where it is. And they often think they'll continue to have this power, but unfortunately, they don't have this power. And which is why I often say then it's a decision that one must think about carefully. If a parent is comfortable and is okay with whatever's going to happen to that business, then rightfully so, you can take this action. But if you still have an interest in it, you might want to think about alternative options here because a lot of things can happen. And the last decision that a lot of people love to make is excluding themselves as beneficiaries in a trust that they have set up. Now, this one, I don't understand at all. I've had a few people send me their trusts that they have drafted or that they have set up, and you'd find that the person who started this trust, i.e. the parents, will not be included as beneficiaries in that trust. And meaning that everything that they have placed in that trust, they don't have a right to benefit from it, but instead the children have a right to benefit, from that trust. What's the logic in doing this? This is a decision, again, I don't advise because when you're moving these properties into this entity, it is to just take away ownership from yourself for whatever reason, estate planning purposes, to try and shield it from future creditors, and to ensure that children don't squander it. But then you are still alive. You still need to live on those properties. You probably still need to benefit from those things that you have placed there, even though you want to protect them. So why are you not listing yourself as a beneficiary there? Why are you leaving yourself out? Right? And then the next thing, again, this we've seen in so many disputes. Time goes by, the children are well enough to understand what's going on, right? And then they start seeing the deed that no, no, no. In fact, we're the only ones who are meant to benefit here. So why are these people living in a property that we're meant to benefit from, that belongs to a trust that we are beneficiaries of, and they are living here rent-free? Why are you doing that? Because you're also still, during your lifetime, wanting to benefit from these things. So why exclude yourself, right? So guys, at times, I know you guys approach legal practitioners with decisions in mind. And it's unfortunate that at times the legal practitioners won't question or try to understand where you're coming from. But it's also important, if you want to get extensive advice before you make these types of decisions, that when you're approaching someone, you make it clear that you have an idea of doing this, but you also want them to guide you in deciding whatever, or in making a decision. So meaning that you need their input here. Then they can make such guidance. Otherwise, in most instances, they will just do what? They will just give you exactly what you want, and sometimes it's not going to be in your best interest. But let's leave it at that. Like I said, these three decisions, I don't think they're the best. Moving your property to a child's name, moving your business while you still have an interest in it. Also not naming yourself as a beneficiary of a trust that you created, which you move your own properties in. Not the best thing to do, according to me. What do you think? Let's discuss in the comment section. We'll see you next time when we have something else to talk about.